Hello, everybody, and welcome to the third story from Sharin Stories.
Woo!
As, al-
Woo!
as always, I'm one of your hosts, Andrew.
Hey, what's up, guys? My name is Paul. Welcome back, guys.
And I'm Sarah.
And here we're going to be turning your mental health into mental wealth. We are no way professionals, mental health professionals in any ways. We are just friends and people who like to share our stories and hope that other people will share their stories with us so that we can turn that mental health into mental wealth. Today, we are lucky enough to listen to the beautiful, the wonderful, the intelligent, the funny, the Sara States. She will be giving us our story. So,
Oh, yeah.
without further ado, as always, we like to jump really right into it. So, Sara, you have the floor for the next 35 minutes.
Okay. So I'm just gonna start by sharing my mental health journey from the beginning, which I think I became aware of my inconsistencies in my mental health around 14. So that was high school. Seemingly, I was really happy. I had all the things that a lot of 14-year-olds have, a great group of friends who I'm still friends with. I played a lot of sports. I did a lot of theater stuff in school and out of school. Very busy. But then I'd go home and really like lash out. I think it was because I was just overrun with anxiety, and not normal anxiety, like exaggerated anxiety, like being unable to cope with life. And now it gets dramatic. I didn't have a way to I didn't know how to cope with these feelings at first. So I started self-harm, and I honestly have no idea like where I even got the idea to do this. But I think it was because I was exposed to that organization To Write Love on Her Arms, which I think was founded like in the early, like maybe 2006 or something like that. And I mean, I know that that's an organization that was like meant to help, you know, teens and children that were doing this, but for me it was just like awareness into it, so it was like my gateway into it. It wasn't like major, like I don't think I was ultimately trying to like hurt myself severely. My foot is falling asleep. But it was definitely like a cry for help, I think. So after that I told my parents, and they were like, what the fuck is wrong with you? So then I went to a psychiatrist, a therapist whom I actually really liked, and it was a really great fit. I think we talked about this in one of the previous episodes, where it's like you can't just like go to one therapist and call it a day. Sometimes you have to like really, you need to try multiple to find out like who's the right fit for you. And this doctor was like perfect for me. So she put me on medication, and it was really like what I needed, and I didn't know that I needed it. But like your body has chemicals, I guess, and you can have chemical imbalances in your body that cause you to like feel these things. And for me, it was a lack of serotonin. And so that medication really helped. But being a kid, sometimes you don't take it, and you can really see the effect of the medicine when you don't take it. And for me, that would be just catastrophic. Like I would have to stay home from school. I'd be fearful to get out of bed. I missed like a solid amount of days of high school because of this. And then towards the end of high school, like even though this was working as far as like depression goes and sort of like feeling bad about myself, there were like other things. My psychiatrist told me that basically she felt like I had anxiety induced OCD, which I had thought I had because I had started, things were like getting really weird in my head. Like I started counting things a lot, actually like nonstop. Like if I walked up the stairs, I need to make a certain number of stairs, like by a certain amount of seconds, I'd be like, oh my gosh, this is like, it would be like tragedy. Or like washing my hands, like turning dials and stuff. Like this was just like a part of life for me then. And it was becoming like a hindrance. Like I couldn't, like you can't, it's hard to live like that when you're a teenager and you're trying not to let on to anyone that this is like something that's going on in your head. But yeah, this like continued until I graduated and went to New York City. And like, by the way, no one knew this about me, like besides my parents, that I was like experiencing this like weird number game. Yes, Peaks?
Yes. So I would like to vouch for this and say that I went to middle school, high school with Sarah, and I just found out recently she missed days. Even I mean, obviously we didn't have all classes together and everything, but I still knew Sarah pretty well, and I had just absolutely no clue about this. So getting
Yeah,
this
I think this would be
information,
a surprise to like a lot of our friends just because like I never talk about this part of life ever. So yeah.
yeah,
Uh but so besides my parents, like no one really knew. Um but with the move to New York City, this kind of like stabilized my health, I think because it was like a change of scene and I think I just needed a change. But that being said, like New York is so scary. I mean, not scary, but like it throws you into like adulthood really fast because the realities of life set in so quick in a big city. And I didn't have any like coping mechanisms that I developed in high school. So for me, it was like really hard to adjust. I came here for college and I felt like my college experience was just sort of I don't know, it's just different. Like what I normal college stuff to me was like playing beer pong in your dorm room or like going to a frat house for a party. I'm not endorsing that either, but like that's definitely not what I was doing. I was more like out with strangers at clubs like until who knows when and then going to dance class in the morning. Like it was like just destructive. So usually when I like know things are spiraling out of control, I will like impulsively try to create change in my life. Which I did. I like dropped out of school within like a day. I was like, called my parents. I was like, I'm really unhappy. I'm feeling crazy. I think I'm going to go and drop out of school. And I literally did like an hour later. I went to school and I was just like, talked to a counselor and was like, I need to leave. And they're like, okay, goodbye. Like pack your things out of your dorm room. You have to be gone by tomorrow. And I was like, oh my God. Okay. Which I did. But anyway, so like I feel like that mixed with like feelings of not liking the school and just like having this sort of like probably a slight substance abuse problem, um, you know, I needed a change. And so I took a job someplace completely different. I took a job in men's fashion at a startup. And then another impulsive decision a year later to go back to school for something completely different. And I think like all that change sort of like masked a lot of my issues, which was good. Like for a few years, I was like really solid until 2015 when my little brother, Michael, he passed away. And it was somewhat related to substance. And so this made me decide to, you know, take a step back. And even though I wasn't like I don't feel like I was like overly abusing substances at that time, I definitely was, you know, indulging. And I said to just take a step back and just see how that affected my general health and just like my mental health. And also like when something like that happens and it hits so close to home, your mind is like, you know, wants to like do something for that person. And for me, like that was what it was. But so that was like really obviously like any tragedy like that is gonna like shake everything that you know. So for me, I tried to deal with that sort of like that was introducing grief to the picture ultimately. So dealing with that, I was trying to do that in like the most complete way that I could. But like I guess like a running theme through my life has been just like pushing forward and sort of distracting yourself with other things. So for me, that meant rushing back to work, which I did. I wasn't like I went back home for a little bit, but it was really only like a week and a half before I went back to work in the city. And so like for me, I thought that was like a good way to cope. But what I didn't realize was like that's just like covering up your feelings and it's really detrimental to your well-being. So yeah, I was like really, really sad, but trying to just like throw myself into other things so that I would forget about it, which I think a lot of people do. But I think it stunts the grieving process. And for me, that led to like a lot of mental instability that I'm still dealing with today, just because I feel like, you know, a lot of like loose ends that were never tied up. And, you know, that is something that I often think about. So if that was in 2015, like present day today, I feel like it's so crazy how like the struggles that you have like from when you're in like middle school to high school to college to like adulthood, it for me, you can see a lot of running themes, but ultimately like I went through a lot of stages, like a lot of different things were happening. Um, and now like most of the time I feel pretty solid. I mean, I feel like I've developed better coping mechanisms and ways to like keep my mental health up. But, sometimes when I can't deal and I can't like figure out how to work things out in a healthy way, I do tend to find like that I revert back to my younger self, which was, in early days of high school when I was lashing out at my parents, and that was like my way of expressing my anger, my sadness, or my grief, or my, whatever was going on. And I still do that today, like much better now, but it's funny because I can just feel myself like reverting back to 14-year-old Sarah, where I'm like lashing out at people, or like, it's usually my partner. And I just think like what I experienced back then has like led to my personality today. So in a lot of ways, it's really hard for me to open up to people about simple things in life. Like, even though we may be like super close friends and we can talk on like a really personal level about things that are happening today. And like, I mean, like more like personal issues, like relationships and things like that. I find it really hard to talk about the simple things like my day-to-day life, or like, my job, or like what I'm doing with my time, or like the plans that I have in the next like year, or whatever is happening like with that. And I just like don't go into those sort of things often because I'm just more comfortable keeping those things to myself. And I think that's a result of sort of like the past, whatever, 15 years or so. But yeah, it's like a constant journey to learn how to be okay with where you are now. And I think that's where I'm at right now, is just trying to be okay with where I'm at now, not trying to push myself. And slowly, I think like those sort of layers sort of peel back. So yeah, it's kind of like my mental health story. I feel like that was really fast, but I think it's like I want to like engage with you both and like talk more. If you have anything you want to add, or like things that you relate to.
I have a paragraph ready whenever
Oh, me too.
whenever we're gonna go. So Paul, you want me to start, or you want to go?
Yeah.
All right. I'll take. So I want to more so kind of ask for a generalization, because they were brought up twice. Your parents. One time you said right when your parents kind of when you first told them about the self-harm, they kind of your response was what the fuck is wrong with you? And then later on, when we talk about them, you're just talking about this dropping school. You called them. So I want to know kind of, number one, how did your parents handle the school drop? And then number two, were they, how much in your corner were they? What kind of approach did they take to you getting therapy? Just a little more in depth on kind of that style, or what happened there.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I wonder if they're going to listen to this. But I'll try not to change my answer too much. But I think regarding like the first thing, when I had told them that I was sort of like into self-harm at that time, that was, I think that was like the first time that I ever confessed to my parents something very serious. Like, up to that point, I don't think I ever had something that I was like confessing to my parents, or like, really diving deep and telling them something like really personal. Like, I don't think I ever had that. So let's say that was like freshman year of high school, or sometime around that. That was like the first time I was like sort of testing the waters into like, what do I actually want to tell these people? And like, what do I actually like, how comfortable am I with them? And, I don't blame them for this at all. Their response was like, okay, they obviously didn't say like, what the fuck is wrong with you? But it was just kind of like, they're very religious people, and very connected with their faiths. And so for them, it was like more, we need you to pray on this. Like, you're having, something's really wrong here. And yeah, we want to help you, but who can help you the most is God. And that took me a lot of therapy sessions to unpack because, you know, as someone who is like connected to their faith somewhat, but like by no means am I like a really, really good Christian. I that was like the answer that I didn't want to hear, or like the answer that it was a nice answer maybe, but it was not useful because to me, I was like, what I really need right now is this, this, and this from you, and you're giving me something that I can't tangibly it's like intangible. Like I can't actually do anything with this. And that was really hard to deal with because, you know, your parents, like I was essentially running to them for help. Like I really wanted their assistance in getting me help, which ultimately they did. And we went to another therapist who is really wonderful. But, you know, that definitely dictated how comfortable I was going to them about other things in the future moving forward, because I felt like if that was the response that I was probably going to get, then I can probably figure this out elsewhere. And I didn't need that kind of support at that time. I still don't need that kind of support now, but yes.
I have a comment about that. So like, I don't know if this is the same thing because I asked a lot about my other Asian friends about this. And like my parents' response, because I told my parents, oh, I wanted to like kill myself. And then like their response was like, okay, go ahead. Or it's either that or just get over it. Because we went through it. And we got over it. So you should get, you know? And then that's kind of like the response. And that's kind of like, okay. And that's how I realized where I was like, okay, so like if that was a response, like when I found my therapist in LA, I didn't tell them. I had to find it on my own. Like, and then when I told them, oh, I have a therapist, they're like, okay, so what? That's kind of like their response. And it's just like, you know, because they're also very religious, but they're also very like, get over it. Like, you know what I mean? This is life. Like, you know? So
right. That's so interesting. Like, I feel like, yeah, every kid, I think has that sort of feeling of anxiety or even despair or, you know, something that they're working through at some point. So I think as adults, yeah, I've run into that too. I think where sometimes adults are like, you know, we all go through this. Like we all have that stage in our lives where we're super angsty or like depressed or. So yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying. I think like as we grow up and become parents, like we have to be really cognizant of the fact that we're growing up in a different world. I think we touched on this in another episode. Like our world today, we're influenced by so many different things and like the media and like, you know, just constantly being shown photos of like things that are going to like mess with your mind. And I think like our struggles with mental health today are maybe they're not better or like worse, but they're just so different.
Yeah. I want to touch really quickly on that as well. I just think that oftentimes we see people say like, I had to do this, like deal with it, right? This is life. I don't understand why we don't want to make life easier for people. Why would we be like, you know what? Everybody has to live through this. Let's just keep it that way. No, let's just change it and make it so that nobody has to live through it. Why would we keep it where everybody's unhappy?
Yeah, I totally get that.
Make an effort.
That's like with the environment too. With the environment, like people are like, oh, I don't believe in global warming. I'm like, okay, but do you still want to throw that piece of trash on your earth? Like, no, right. Like you still try to make it better.
Exactly. Yeah. There still should be some sort of effort in you to make it a little bit better. Right. Awesome. So yeah, I wanted to see a little bit about exactly what your parents' kind of role was in getting there, and it's interesting to see what it was like from a religious aspect, because even though my family's not religious, I don't think that was something that they would kind of tell me the way that I could get better, or the way that it would work for me.
Was your parents really tough on you, like growing up,
Well, Paul, I don't think you know this about me, but my parents are Caucasian, so I was adopted.
Okay.
So our family dynamic is maybe a little bit different than you know, others, but so that, I mean, yeah, but that's also why I feel like, we could go into that for probably like hours and hours and hours and hours. And I haven't touched on that really with anyone before, but it's definitely part of my mental health journey as well.
Oh wow.
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe as we get farther throughout this whole process, we'll be able to get, I mean, just other people on that kind of experience the same thing. It'll be great to see the dynamic between the two of you and just exactly how it is. But I know there's a lot of information already coming out, so I don't want to overload you and make you talk for the next 4 hours or anything.
Yeah.
But I do got more. I got a lot more questions. So I do want to ask a little bit about the medication coming in. Did you find at all what I find, I think let's take something like coffee for a little bit, is like a lot of times, right, people are constantly tired, so they'll turn to coffee. And then, years later when they're still on coffee, obviously you're going to create some sort of dependency, and days that you don't get it, they get headaches or things like that. Did you find that the worst days you've ever had in your life, the worst episodes, I guess, in your sense for this, for your OCD or anything like that, was after the medicine, but not taken, or was it just straight up before the medicine was even in existence?
I'd say before the medication were definitely the worst days, but that doesn't mean that when I didn't take it for whatever reason, like I forgot, those days were terrible, but they were different in a different way. It was like a temporary withdrawal almost, or maybe it was in my head too. Like, I'm not a doctor. Like, I don't know how this works, but like, I felt like those days I felt really anxious to the point where I couldn't get out of bed. But before that, my world was like rocked by like a bunch of different things. And I think the serotonin for me helped balance that sort of feeling so that I could get through everyday life, as a regular normal kid. But so yeah, I think all those things were still there, but they were just leveled out.
Okay. All right. So overall, the medication had benefits.
It was the right thing to do for me, for sure.
Right. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And coming off of it though was also really hard.
So, that's interesting. So you're currently not taking medication?
No. I stopped like maybe 6 years ago or something like that.
Wow.
And it was I just felt like I was at that point where I didn't want to put medication in my body anymore. I don't remember why. Like, maybe I read something or whatever, and I was just like, I think I should, take myself off of this. And that was really hard. But and I think like at that point I had a dependency on it in a way, right? Because like after however many years, I think your body is like sort of adjusted to this new substance. But yeah, worked through that.
So you have been off the medication longer. So your brother passed away after you got off the medication.
Correct.
And it was that pretty soon after.
I want to say it was probably like 2 years difference.
Okay. So it's not like it was a kind of throwing you into that sort of situation
right when
you're.
No. Yeah, I was at a pretty good point when my brother passed, I think.
Okay.
Like, I think, yeah, I mean, I had just met my partner today, and we were stabilizing life together, and I think like I was in a good spot. Nothing like puts you in a good spot for something like that, but I mean, like, relatively speaking, like where I was at in my head, I was, probably at the best. I was at that point where like if something was going to be thrown my way, it was the best I was in the best mental capacity to handle it.
That's awesome. Obviously, for such a traumatic event, it's good to be in as good a mindset as possible. What do you think the role that your significant other has had on your mental health, you think? I'm throwing you
you
under
know,
the bus. I'm throwing you under the bus, so just in case anybody gets to listen.
he loves
It's just-
listening to podcasts. Yeah, he. It's so funny. Like I feel like we also had our own little journey, which affected my mental health as well. But we've been together now for um, more than 5 years, I think, and just like any other partner, like you obviously have your differences and your similarities. And I'm like one of those people who, when I do have that person whom I really love and trust, I do want to open up like every aspect of my life to them, which is rare. But like with this person, we have that, and he's just not like that. So like you can't expect too much of people who are like, it is what it is. Like that's just who I am, and I will like vent and talk about my emotions and my feelings and like the things I've been through. And just like I could talk like that with someone that I trust for days, just like nonstop. Which I understand for some people can be a lot, especially when they're not used to being that listener or being a sharer. And I think that's the kind of like that was our dynamic. And there were a lot of days where I was like, why can't you just tell me how you feel about this? Like, you don't feel anything, like, which is not true, but it's just like some people just aren't, even with the people that they love and trust, they're not going to just open up like that, like, on the daily. Like when it comes down to it, and you're like begging them to, yeah, maybe they'll step up to the plate, but like on a daily basis, they're not going to like deep dive into their feelings and emotions. So we've adjusted to that, and I understand it now, and we find compromise, just like what a lot of couples do. And so yeah, and I've also learned to sort of like, not everything needs to be shared. And I have journals, and I have things that I like to write, and other ways of like sharing that you don't need another person there all the time.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm someone I think that is a little less open as well, so even with people that I love and are dear to me. So I definitely understand. You definitely have to kind of work with each other in those kind of regards. But it's always interesting to kind of be around that different style or different approach with anybody, no matter who the people you hang out with. When they kind of carry themselves a little differently, you oftentimes either learn from them or kind of realize what you don't want to do with your own mental health. So it's always nice when you kind of can get at least a little bit into their journey as well.
I have a question about just so you talk about sharing with your significant other. So Whitney Cummings mentioned this at her podcast, where it's just like you when you share something about your life, let's say like a big moment, do you share it first with you? Do you wait first and share it with your significant other, or you tell people, like you tell your best friends right away, and then whenever you get the time to share with your significant other, you share with him?
I love that question. We should ask that to our followers too. So I think that I do not share with my friends, for example. Basically, I mean, most things. I mean, that like happen that are good. Like if I have a success in something with work, or like something exciting happens to me, it's pretty rare that I'm just like, that I'm indulging that like giving that information out to friends or peers. But the first person that I always tell is my partner. And I don't know like what differentiates the level of trust, or like what that is, like the difference between my friends and my partner, because I love my friends. I like Peaks knows, like we have been stuck together like glue since who knows when. Like it's always been the same people. We do tell each other like, mostly everything, but it's the little things like career successes and happinesses that like I just don't like. I don't tell them. Someone said to me the other day, like one of my closest friends, she was like I have no idea like what you do. Like I know you're an actor, and I know you like do like this sort of thing, but like I don't actually know like what you're doing in that. And I just don't like to share that sort of stuff. Whereas like with my partner, I love sharing that information, and I force him to see it all. So yeah, Peaks, you have something to say?
I do, but I do wanted you to finish if you did. But I think there may be a little more set reason for this is because when you gain success as an individual, your partner also gains that success. So they're sharing that success with you. Rather than when you get success, your friends technically share the success, and if you have a good friend group, they do, and they probably actually do. If I guarantee, if you told your friends, the excitement would be real, right? No matter what you told us, the excitement would be there. But you start to feel more so as if now I'm bragging rather than kind of sharing my success with someone. So like
Right.
it's almost as if you think you're like, maybe I don't need to tell these people because I don't want to sound like I'm the king of the jungle right now. No, I'm not running the show. Like I'm still me, and I still want them to think I'm me, and I still want them to be like, you know, everyday Sara. So you don't want to act like you're bragging, act like you're hot shit, which you're not. The point is you're not, but like that's just how we feel.
I'm not hot shit. Okay,
No, you're
you
absolutely
literally just said
hot
that
shit.
twice in a row. You're like, you're not hot shit. You're not.
No,
Like,
I wasn't saying you're not hot shit. I'm saying you're not bragging. I'm saying you're not bragging. You are hot shit, Sara. That's without question. I don't have to worry about that. Absolutely hot shit. Absolutely hot shit. But the point is, you're not bragging, is what I meant to say.
Yeah, right. I get what you're saying, and I think you're totally right. Like spot on. Like with your partner, like I don't feel uncomfortable bragging to my partner about like all of the great things that are happening in my life because yeah, you're right. We're sharing in that success. We're sharing stories. We're sharing success.
But you're not hot shit.
That should be the title of this video. Like Sara's Stories. Sara, she's not hot shit, or maybe it should be she is hot shit.
No, yeah, she is hot shit. It's definitely she is hot shit.
Okay.
I can keep going, Paul. I want you to have questions too. So
I want to get to our mental health question of the day on sympathy versus empathy. So a lot of so let's say give an example about, let's say what's going on right now, like say the Black Lives Matter movement. So a lot of Black people say, oh, I don't want you to give me sympathy. Like I don't want your sympathy. I want you to understand me. I want you to feel what I feel. And that's not, because I feel like that's more empathy than sympathy. Because I feel like sympathy is like feeling sorry for them, and they don't need to be felt sorry for. Like, you know what I mean? Because they feel like that's offensive. Like, you know? So instead, a lot more, they want more, like they want to give you, they want to feel the empathy, and they want to see that you care and that you want to make change in their community, you know? So what do you think about sympathy versus empathy? Do you think it's kind of the same in like the mental health, or is it different?
I would like to really briefly say that in the example you just gave for Black Lives Matter, I would say neither really work in our regard. There's nothing feeling sorry is going to do. I mean, as a whole, and nothing, and we can't fully understand how these people feel. I think action is the only option in Black Lives Matter. But when it comes to sympathy versus empathy as a whole, I think we see people understand sympathy way better than they understand empathy. I know a lot of people that, from what I recognize, have no concept of what it's like to live in someone else's shoes.
I think that you can teach sympathy, but you can't teach like empathy is something that, like, I don't know how you teach empathy.
Yeah.
Like how do you teach that to, like, you know, someone as an adult?
Yeah.
I don't know if you can.
Yeah.
I would say, like, if you can, the only way is at a young age being exposed to a ton of different like societal norms, and just for example, like I grew up in suburban Buffalo, suburban Williamsville. My mother was a inner city low income area teacher. So I had this like she would go to work and see all this stuff and her heart would be broken, and then she'd come home to a family and we'd have this nice dinner and we'd sit down and talk about these things, right? So I think just being exposed as much as possible to different situations is the only way to really create empathy. I mean, traveling, whatever it might be, understanding different cultures, understanding different people is the only possible way to create empathy, and the only way to do that is by exposing them to those people. In my belief, rather than sympathy, it's just like people die all the time. Hey, I'm sorry for your loss. Right? Like we kind of generally learn that one just out of happenstance, because we too have actually like seen these things happen, but now that someone else is experiencing it, we're sorry. We feel bad. There's not much else we can do. But when it comes to empathy, it's really, really understanding exactly where someone sits.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like if you do understand, like I feel like empathy is more going above and beyond of sympathy. It's like if you're empathic to someone, you're gonna do something about it. Like, you know what I mean? Instead of like, if you just feel sympathy, you're just gonna be like, okay, like whatever. I understand, like not like understand, but like I feel like you're just saying like I'm sorry, but you don't really mean it. I feel like that's sympathy. Like, you know what I mean? So instead of like
Right.
empathy, just like I'm gonna do something about it, and I'm gonna do everything I can to make this community better. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that like what we've been seeing, especially with what you mentioned before, with like the social justice movement and things like that, we're seeing a lot of people hop onto their social media and onto their various channels and platforms, and they're expressing their empathy and their sympathy. But what they're missing is that if you truly are empathetic to someone else's injustice, that's what propels you into action, and that's ultimately what we need to do. And you can still, advocacy, allyship, all of those things require empathy, right? Like, you don't get to that point without being an empathetic human towards whatever you're fighting for. But empathy is not going to do it. Like, just to be like, yeah, like I empathize with you, like I really understand, like, or I'm trying, I will never understand, but like I'll try to see, like, yeah, like that is not enough. Like, ultimately, yeah, like, okay, you're taking the bare minimum, like the bare minimum of like actually, like, you're not following through on that empathy. Like, you really need to, if you're truly being empathetic, in my opinion, if you're actually wanting to practice empathy and like you want to be empathetic toward whatever cause, like, you need to take direct action steps in order to actually show that you're an advocate or an ally, or whatever, wherever you identify.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the same thing with like if you have a family member or like your significant other, like, if they're going through something or they get in trouble, let's say your significant other gets in trouble with like the law or something, you're gonna fight for that person because you empathize. Like, you know what I mean? So you're gonna do everything you can. You're gonna hire a lawyer, whatever, because you empathize. That's in every situation. But I feel like it's just so like, I don't know. I just feel like it's just feeling sorry for somebody without any action. Like,
For I'd say like traumatic event. This is another question I want to pose to you guys. For like traumatic events, let's say you losing your brother, or someone losing their parent, or in terms of racial injustice, just living a full life where you constantly have to deal with racism. Do you think if you have not lived through that, you can technically be empathetic at that point? So do you think if so one of my friends recently lost their father, I have not lost any of my parents, I have no understanding of exactly what he's going through. Do you think I can still sit here and be empathetic, or do you think at that point I'm kind of just, and I'm sympathy, just borderlining with me being his close friend? If that makes sense.
I think that I know you, Peaks, and I know you would identify as like an empathetic person. And what does that mean? Like, I think it means that even when you're not experiencing what someone else is going through, you're able to provide the support, the love, and the you know, whatever they need in order to help them through that time. Like, you know, I don't think necessarily we need to experience everything that everyone else is experiencing, but we have to have a general understanding of that sort of feeling and what sort of like, you know, you can still understand, everyone has the same feelings. So, and those are the result of events, and you can still understand, you know, how that feels in your body, how devastation feels, how grief feels, how injustice feels in some ways. Like, you can understand that. And so I think like we have to like bridge that gap and be able to be like, oh, I'm going to show you empathy by doing this. Like, by being that person that will listen, by bringing food to your house when you need it, like all that sort of stuff. Like, I think definitely we can show empathy and like follow through on empathy too.
Yeah.
Without having actually experienced what that person is going through.
Okay.
Hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the goal, right? Of empathy,
yeah, that's the goal. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, for me, it's like, you know, did you say your friend lost his dad?
Yeah, a friend of mine lost his dad recently.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm pretty sure, like, you've lost, like a family member as well, and I'm pretty sure you know how it feels to, you know, lose somebody, you know. And this, you know, it's just, I mean, it's the same thing with me, even though, like, I empathize so much with the Black Lives Matter movement, because even though I'm not Black, I felt injustice in my life, but by being part of the LGBT community, you know. So
Right.
I have felt injustice with the cops, you know, even though I'm not Black, you know, because just because I'm at a gay bar or whatever, like they're automatically thinking I have AIDS or whatever, like, you know. So
Right.
there's so much similarities, you know. So you like what Sarah said there, you can also empathize with someone, but because we all feel something, we all went through a lot of things, you know. But following through, like what Sarah said, is also, you know, really
big
good.
thing.
Yeah. So,
Awesome. So I do want to just make a couple last comments on Sarah's story, and we'll wrap the question up there unless anybody has something final to say about empathy versus sympathy. You guys think anything or?
No, but I think we should post this question to other people because I'm so interested in hearing what other people feel too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
By the way, we are always interested to hear what our listeners have to say. Email us, DM us on any of the things. You slide right into our DMs. I promise you we won't bite.
Shall we announce our guest next week so our guests can ask him questions?
Oh yes, actually that would be a great idea. I'm gonna do that right at the end. I do want to ask a couple more things to Sarah, just really small things. Sarah, is there something you try to do every single day in an effort to make this better? I know you said you write in your journal every once in a while. Is there like people do like the 3 things I'm grateful for today at the end of the day? Like, is there anything you try to do every single day?
I love the gratitude exercise, although I haven't been consistent on that, but I think it was your brother who brought that to my attention. Writing like 5 things that you're grateful for in the morning or in the evening. I love that. And I do want to put that into my routine, but that's like about like, I have to create that habit, which is a whole nother story. But I do try to practice yoga every day. I find that like that sort of movement is really calming and really helps my stress level. I'm like my breathing exercises, like I love it.
I think breathing exercises are very important.
Yeah,
I think a lot of times. Okay, awesome. And then I just wanted to touch on something right at the beginning. You used the term exaggerated anxiety, and I just want to let you know that there's really no such thing. That's almost a oxymoron, and no anxiety is exaggerated. People live differently, and you had a lot of anxiety. That was not exaggerated anxiety. Sounds like the onus is on you, which it's not. You were not exaggerating your anxiety. You were living with an intense anxiety, and it just happened to be compounding. So I just wanted to touch back on that and say, you weren't exaggerating anything in your regard for anxiety. You just were living with anxiety.
Yeah.
But that will wrap it up for our third episode of Sharin Stories. Thank you, Sara. I was glued to my screen the entire time. That was extremely interesting, and I'm excited to hear more as we kind of keep doing more episodes and you relate to the people that come on. But next week, we will have our first guest outside of the three of us. So you will not just be seeing our beautiful mugs, but you will be seeing a fourth beautiful mug. And that fourth episode will be Paul. You're the one who knows him. I'll let you introduce the fourth episode.
So it's football season, guys. So
For those who care.
So our guest is Mr. Joe Pereira, who played for the Detroit Lions and also played for the New England Patriots along with Tom Brady. So so he will be talking about his mental health journey and what he does. I know he has a really good story about it. And he'll be sharing a lot of things with you guys. So if you guys have any questions for him about his journey now, I know he is retired already. So if you guys have any questions, just DM us, email us at SharinStoriesPodcast@gmail.com. So.
And with that, let's turn our mental health into mental wealth together and say goodbye. Bye, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in this week.
Bye.